Hello, everyone. Welcome to Awesome. If you could wind down your conversations, we'll have some time afterwards where you can chat with your neighbor and network and do all that kind of good stuff. There should be plenty of beer left over, although Sean and Chris are in the back, so that might not be true. They're getting called out because they're still talking. All right, so welcome to Awesome. Awesome's #1 online marketing meetup. And I'm David Vogelpol, I'm the host, and I work with Kelsey, who actually does most of the work here, getting all the descriptions written and all the food order and all that kind of stuff. So thank you, Kelsey, for that. The food and beer are actually sponsored by Affiliate Summit. Thanks to Sean. If you guys give him a round of applause. So I just got back from Affiliate Summit. How many weeks ago was it, Sean? 2? Yep, 2 weeks ago. It was a blast. So if you haven't had a chance to go to Affiliate Summit, you'll have a really good time, just trust me. And you'll learn a lot of good stuff too. The hashtag tonight is BeAwesome. Please use the Meetup app to check in and take photos. Those photos are helpful when we use them for various things. Capital Factory, of course, provides this great space for free. And I'm going to get out of the way of our speaker and let him give his presentation. But before I do that, I want to tell you a little bit about when I first saw him speak at PubCon in New Orleans. I may have seen him speak before that, but that was the one that stuck with me. And the level of content that he provided, the specific actionable examples really stuck with me. Some of the presentation techniques that he uses really stuck with me. And these are things that I carry forward when I do public speaking as well. Some things I stole from you. But he's a really good speaker and he conveys really good information. He is the director of search at Auto Revo, and he helps There we go. He helps car dealerships with their SEO and marketing their websites. So without further ado, Mr. Greg Gifford.
Okay. Anybody offended by F-bombs? I hope not, because there's going to be some.
Good.
Okay, I talk really fucking fast. I've got 180 slides to go through here in 40 minutes. We're starting the timer right here. I go really fast, so if you're going to try to take notes, just give up right now. bit.ly/awesome-local-SEO lets you download this deck in its entirety. You'll miss some of the jokes because there's some jokes in here and the puns aren't as good later, so you'll be happy that you're here. So, local SEO is serious business. This is tonight's presentation. So, like he said, I'm the director of SEO for an automotive software company, so I work with used car dealers all over the country. It's super awesome. These are the kind of guys that I talk to all the time. I write weekly on our blog, autorevo.com/blog, and we do a Tuesday tip video clip, so every Tuesday you get to see my smiling face doing goofy shit. And it's 80% SEO tips, so if you want any knowledge about local SEO, that's a great source. I also write for Search Engine Land, so check out their local search column. I'm the first week of every month. So I'm also a firm believer in the fact that bullet points kill kittens, so this will be a bullet point free presentation. So as you notice, this is local SEO, serious business. Please show hands, how many people have seen Vacation? Actually, let's not do that. How many people have not seen Vacation? Okay, your homework is to go home and watch this movie. It is one of the greatest movies ever made. So for those of you that haven't seen it, the reason that his face is like this is because he was all stressed out and he was trying to get everything packed up in their car because they're on vacation, and he tied the dog to the back bumper and then he drove, and then the cop pulls him over and he's like, "Do you know what the penalty for animal cruelty is in this state?" And Chevy Chase says, "I don't know," and the officer says, "Well, it's probably pretty stiff." So anybody that's curious, because there's going to be a lot of movies in here, I have 139 comedy movie references because every time I do a presentation there's always a theme. Tonight's theme is comedy. 139 references. If you're curious about the movie, because there's going to be some you guys haven't seen, attribution down there in the bottom corner. I also include at least one comedy movie for every year in the last 51 years. And I also include 19 movies from 1985, which is the high point of American film comedy. So let's get going. Everybody ready? Why the long face? You guys spending all your time looking up at your competitors that are ranked higher than you? It's frustrating, isn't it? You guys feel like you're clueless about SEO? I should get more laughs because that's the best joke in the deck here, guys. Come on. Now, I don't want to seem like I've got a huge melon that has its own gravity system, but I am going to give you some really kick-ass tips tonight And unlike a lot of other speakers that you may have seen at some conferences, I'm not gonna talk out of my ass. I'm gonna give you guys actual, real tips that really work. But keep in mind, there is no magic miracle pill for SEO. But if you follow these tips, you're gonna be able to make your business or your client's business as awesome and as visible as the Flying Elvises. And little side info, this dude right here, Burton Gilliam, he was in Blazing Saddles. He's been in tons of stuff. The guy lives like 2 blocks over from me. He's the coolest dude ever, has the best stories. So anyway, just like a fat guy in a little coat, I'm gonna squeeze in as much awesome information as I can into the next 37 minutes. So, are we ready?
Yeah.
Yes. How many people in here are Harold and Kumar fans? Anybody? You see the Christmas movie? So Harold and Kumar Christmas, they had the Waffle Bot. And the commercial for the Waffle Bot movie said, robots plus waffles equals awesome. Just like that, local plus SEO equals awesome. So with traditional SEO, you're trying to get a website to rank for a search query anywhere. With local SEO, you're trying to get a website to rank for a search query in a specific geographic area. So you don't care, if you're in Austin, you don't care if somebody in Dallas or Houston or New York sees your site. You only care about people in Austin. Local SEO is everything that traditional SEO is, plus additional signals. So any business that has a physical location or that serves people in a small geographic area absolutely needs to be doing local SEO. And if you don't believe me that it is absolutely vital to your success, simple math proves that you need it. But I'm not going to get into that because, again, I've got a ton of shit to squeeze in here. So if you're curious about my super awesome simple math equation, go to bit.ly/SEO math, that's all lowercase. That's my search engine land article that shows you. We can get into it later afterwards if you really want to ask me. So you need somebody on staff that understands what local SEO is, or you need an agency that understands local SEO and specializes in it. So if you're a business and you're trying to hire an agency, or if you're an agency and you're trying to sell to people, you don't want to look shady, and if you're a business, you don't want to hire somebody shady. So right here, bit.ly/shady SEO. That's a video I did with tips on how to spot shady SEO providers. Again, not going to go way into that because I got more important shit to talk about. So with local SEO, Google wants local SEO basically to be like a drive-through. They want you to be able to pull in and get out really quickly with exactly what you need. But we all know the problem with drive-thrus.
They fuck you in the drive, okay? They fuck you in the drive-thru.
Nobody's seen Lethal Weapon 2? Come on, you guys. These are supposed to be big laugh jokes here, people. So when we're talking about local SEO, they fuck you at the drive-thru. And why does it feel like Google's using the whole fist? Because Google keeps changing the game. We have the Panda update. Panda targeted bad content. If you've got crappy content on your site, Panda's gonna hit you. Version 1, 2011. Version 4.1, September 2014. That's 27 versions of Panda. Google really cares about the fact that you guys have good content. Then we had the Penguin update. Penguin targeted bad links. 2012 up through 2014, and now they don't even have major releases anymore. Now it's a continuous update situation. You gotta have good links. Then we have the Hummingbird update that came out in September 2013. This one's not a penalty-based update. This is a complete change of Google's engine. Before Hummingbird, Google was doing strictly keyword-to-keyword matching. Now Google is looking at the semantics. So the difference between car dealer and car dealership is no longer really that much of a difference. Okay? If you're an attorney, Google's starting to make the connection and understand that personal injury attorney is the same thing as personal injury lawyer. So it's drastically changing the way that you guys need to optimize your sites. Then we had the Pigeon update last July. Anybody in here heard of this? This is incredibly huge for any business that has a physical location. This completely changed the way that Google calculates local search results. So I'm going to actually talk about some of the results of this. So one of the things is when you do a search, if you're at your computer, Google uses your IP address and knows where you're located. Or if you're doing it on your phone, obviously it triangulates by your cell phone signal, knows exactly where your location is. So it's going to serve up local results. So before, there was a really big circle drawn around your location that you could get possible searches from. Now that circle's about half the size. So for businesses that maybe were in Round Rock and able to rank very high, I had a car dealership in Round Rock that ranked #2 for used cars Austin. It doesn't happen anymore because that search radius is smaller. There are also, you guys know what a 7-pack is. That's when you do the search, you've got regular results, then you've got the ones that have the reviews and the map pin and the phone number and the address. That's called the 7-pack. But after Pigeon, now it's less often a 7-pack and more often a 3-pack or a 2-pack. And directories are now heavily favored. So in the organic listings, where before you might have 9 out of 10 be actual small businesses in the area, now you've got a lot of directories showing up. So out of those 10 organic results, you might only see 2 or 3 actual small businesses because everything else is the big things like Yelp or TripAdvisor or Urban Spoon. So Barnacle SEO is very important. Barnacle SEO is the idea that you attach yourself to the SEO power of a larger site so that you can still catch mentions and visibility. So if you'd like to know more about that, because again, don't have time to get into it, autorebo.com/blog/barnacle-SEO is a video that talks about how to do that. Also, usually when Google does an update, there's kind of a fluctuation for a couple of days and then it settles in. This came out at the end of July. Results are still crazy fluctuating. You might check your rankings in the morning and check it 2 hours later at lunch and it's vastly different. Then you check it 2 hours later at 2 and it's vastly different. You check it again when you get home, it's vastly different. There's a lot of evidence that supports the fact that Google is running different versions of Pigeon at different data centers. So if you do a search right now and you hit a data center in Austin, you'll get one set of results. And if you do a search later and for whatever reason Google routes you to a data center in Phoenix, you get a different set of results because it's different. Now, a lot of us in the local SEO game were hoping that the fact that they were still testing this 7 months later, 8 months later, meant that, hey, this is really just a massive test and it's going to go away. So hopefully all this shit's going to go away and we're going to go back to the good results that we used to get. But at Christmas, they rolled out Pigeon to Canada, the UK, and Australia. So Pigeon's not going anywhere. This is how it's going to be from now on. Another big change, no more authorship. Authorship was huge for the last couple of years. You associate yourself with the content you create and you get a boost. Google pushed it really hard, then Google pulled it in September. It's gone. Don't talk about it. No more local carousel. Okay, so like a year ago, Google got rid of the 7-pack for certain verticals. So like entertainment, restaurant, service, hotels. Instead of showing up in the 7-pack, you had the carousel that looked like this, that showed up across the top of the browser bar. And so now you lose all of that address information because you're just getting a picture, and it's a shitty picture because you had no way of choosing what it was because Google sucks and likes to fuck businesses. And then you had the reviews that covered up your shitty picture, and then your business name, and then how much money it was, and that was all. But it was almost a little bit better of a situation because instead of being stacked vertically where number 1 was obviously the best, you're stacked horizontally. So if you were in the number 5 spot but you had a really kick-ass photo, you might get a lot of clicks. Well, Google decided that they didn't like this, and they wanted to fuck people even worse. So now they've changed it to this 3-pack that a lot of people are calling the hamburger pack because it has a little hamburger icon like on mobile stuff. So this is what's there now. So we went from 7 results to like 12 to 18 results to now 3. So now it's even worse of a possible experience for anybody.
You're killing me, Smalls.
So then just in December, you've got Google My Business, which is what used to be called Google Places. And Google puts out a quality guideline update every once in a while. It says, hey, this is the right way to fill out these pages. So they updated this in December. So this is another really interesting thing of Google likes to really flip-flop and switch its mind. So in April of 2014, Google came out and said, hey, you know what? When you're filling out your Google My Business / Google Places name, we know a lot of businesses might have multiple locations in a city. So we're going to allow you to put a single descriptive word at the end of your business name in Google My Business. So your Google listing where it's got your reviews and everything, you could actually add a word that wasn't your business name that maybe said East Side or West Side or downtown or whatever. Google encouraged this, told everybody to do it. Now in December, Google said, oh, you know what? Guess what? You can't do that anymore, and we're going to penalize you if you do the thing that up until yesterday we were telling you to do.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this.
Then the really big deal when they switched from Places to Google My Business was in Places you could only pick 5 categories for your business. Then they switched to Google My Business and they said, oh, guess what? Now you can put 10 categories. So you can pick as many awesome things that apply to your business, and the more categories you put, the better you're going to show up in rankings. And Google encourages everyone to pick as many categories as possible. Until December when they completely did a 180 and said, now you can only pick the most specific category that applies to you.
Doesn't anyone know what it is? I feel like I'm taking a crazy pill!
Then now they also said multiple brands that are at a single location with a single listing have to choose a single name. This doesn't make sense, people. I hope you're understanding how crazy this stuff is. Also, multi-location chains. So like McDonald's, Burger King, Ace Cash Express, anything that has multiple locations, Starbucks, they're going to start enforcing that your naming conventions are the same and that your categories are the same between all of your listings. And also, if you've got like an auto dealership where you've got a sales department and a service department, in the past, you could put car sales and auto service on both. Now Google says if you've got a business that has separate departments, that has separate listings, the separate listings have to have different categories on them. You can't overlap the categories. And Google's finally come out and said no virtual offices. So if you've got like a Regis office that you're using to try to rank into a city, that doesn't work anymore. So obviously if it's staffed, it's not a virtual office, but Google's saying you can't use those Regis rent an office space for a month kind of thing and use that to show up in Google. It has to actually have a full-time staff. So with all these changes, other than sniff and glue, what the heck do you do? Well, the best thing to do is they've got Google Business Forums. And Jade Wang is in there, she's awesome. You can go in, and as long as you're polite, you can go in and you basically phrase it, and you don't want to be an all hothead, and you got to come in and say, hey, can I trouble you for an answer to this issue that I'm having with my page?
You can trouble me for a warm glass of shut the hell up.
It's not quite that bad, but it's about that, because Google doesn't like to tell you what to do. So what do? So Moz does a study every year where they take the top 40 people-ish, last year was 35, 2014 was 40 people. They take the top experts in local SEO, and they send out this huge questionnaire about, hey, what works, what doesn't work, what do you think is the most important? Then they aggregate all of the answers, and we end up with this. So we get this study from Moz every year, and this is the Local Search Bible. This is what's gonna tell you the signals that really matter to get your site to show up. And just to brag a little bit, I'm one of those guys that they interview, because I do this stuff all the time. So for the rest of this, we are going to go through actually each of these signals in order of importance and talk about the things that you guys need to be doing. And I've got 26 minutes left, so we're doing really well. So on-page signals, 21%, the biggest chunk of the pie is the content on your website. You've got to be unique. The biggest thing that I'm pushing this year to people is you have to be unique with your content. Your customers and potential customers are going to be looking at your competitors. They're going to be shopping around. Everybody shops around now. Before you get a phone call or a lead form filled out, they're going to be looking at your competitor's website. You've got to stand out if you want that lead. You've got to have an awesome user experience. So anything that you're putting on your website, it's got to be with the thought process of, this is going to make my website more kick-ass for my users. You've got to stop trying to fool the nerds at Google's with tips and tricks. You cannot do SEO tricks anymore. There's no such thing as SEO tricks. It's marketing, okay? How many people in here have seen Weird Science? Right? Like 10 people? By the way, that is Iron Man with a bra on his head right there. So if nothing else, that's worth going to see this movie for. So you've got to think of your SEO as marketing, as branding your business. You cannot think of it as tricks. So you've got to create the best user experience for the people that are going to be on your website as you possibly can. But while you're doing that, and while you're creating that awesome content, you also have to think about serving it up the right way so that it's going to rank well in Google. So the things that you need to optimize on your website for local. Now this is definitely, these things have to happen on the landing page that you're linking to from your Google My Business listing, but really it should happen on every page of your website for a local site. You need to have the city and state mentioned in the title tag. So the title tag is, for those of you that don't know, what shows up above the address at the top of the browser, and it's the summary of what that page is about. It should be a different title tag on every page of your site, and for local businesses, you've got to include city and state there. You've also got to have it in the H1 heading, which is the big thick text that's the headline of the actual page right above your text. You've got to make sure that you're including city and state there. I talk to businesses all the time that put all of the right stuff everywhere, but then they don't mention in the actual text content of their site where they're located. You've got to have it in your text content as well. And then when you've got images, Google can't see what's in those images. So there's something called alt text. It's a tag that goes in the image embed that describes the image. In that alt text, it's a great place to put in more information about city and state to help prove local relevancy. And then in your meta description, now there's probably an SEO in here somewhere that says, but meta description doesn't matter. But meta description does matter. So the meta description is code that goes in the back of the site, and that's what shows up as your little description under your link in Google. This does not play into the algorithm. This will not help you rank. But this is important because this is like a mini ad for the page that's going to rank in Google. So if your page is showing up in Google and you've got a couple sentences that describe that page, it's super important to get city and state in there. Because if somebody is searching for massage therapist Austin, Texas, and you've got Austin, Texas and massage therapist in your meta description, that's going to be highlighted in bold in Google when you show up in Google. So you've got to have it there. Also, obviously you can't do this on your home page, but for landing pages, if you've got multiple locations, Anywhere that you can, city and state and URL. I do a lot of work with attorneys too, and so they're always optimizing for personal injury attorney or bankruptcy attorney. And they always forget to say personal injury attorney, Austin, Texas. It's not anything about other, you don't want to think about, I'm trying to match the keywords to fool Google. You need to think about, I'm trying to prove my relevancy. You've got to make sure you've got your city and state everywhere that you can, because you want to drive home the fact that that's where you're located. You also need to make sure that on your landing page from Google My Business and on the homepage of your site, you've got an embedded Google map. And it needs to be embedded from your Google My Business page, not just from putting an address in. And for a side note, if there's any Goonies fans in here, I have a really kick-ass sloth tattoo if you want to come up and see it afterwards. It's super rad. But the reason you need to do it from your Google My Business page and not from just Google Maps, on the left here, now I'm going to start really I travel a lot, I like to eat well, and Uchi is my favorite restaurant in the world, so there's going to be a ton of crap in here about Uchi, so if you guys don't like Uchi, A, you suck, B, sorry, you're going to be bored. On the left there, that's just putting in the address of Uchi, that's all you see. On the right, if we embed the map from their actual Google My Business page, see how it has their business name, and it's got their review stars. So it's a better experience for your customers to see that on your site. It's also a better signal to Google. You also need to make sure that You also need to make sure that you got your NAP on every page and that your NAP is marked up by schema. And there's probably people in here going, wait, what's NAP? NAP is what we in the industry call name, address, phone number. You need to have your name, your address, and your phone number on every page of your site, preferably up in your banner, but also in your content. If you've got it up in your banner, make sure that it's live text and not part of a graphic. But it's also important to have it in your content, especially on the page that you're linking to from your Google My Business listing. And also, it should be marked up with schema. Schema is code that organizes stuff. So Google and the search engines got together and said, hey, let's figure out a way that we can code certain bits of information so that it saves us time. So when Google comes to your site, it's going to crawl your site. Now, if it has to spend extra time figuring out what your information is, that's less time it can spend crawling your site. So if you use schema to mark your information up, you're serving it up exactly how you want it. And a great example, and Moonshine Patio Bar and Grill, any fans? I had dinner there tonight, place kicks ass. So, hours of operation. Some restaurants or some businesses might just write M-F or M-TH or whatever. Some might write out the whole name. Some write Mon through Thurs. With schema, when the code pops up, you can see up in here, you're telling Google, here's what the opening hours are in the format that Google wants to see it. So Google doesn't have to figure out what the hell you wrote right here because you're telling Google right here in the perfect format that Google wants what your hours are. And also notice right at the beginning when you're saying, hey, here's a bunch of schema crap, it says right here, oh, by the way, this is all about a restaurant. So Google, right now, right off the bat, as soon as it comes to your site, knows, hey, this is a restaurant, this is where it's located, this is its phone number, and this is its hours, without having to look at anything else on your site. So when Google never tells you what to do, so when Google says, hey, you guys should probably use schema, you guys damn well should be using it. You've also got to make sure you're using a local phone number. That means no 800 or call tracking. Is anybody in here crapping their pants because I just said that? Okay, good, because a lot of car dealers freak out. But 800 and call tracking are bad. They're a really bad idea. It's like waxing your chest when you're Steve Carell. It's painful and it does not end up looking good for your SEO. Google wants to see local area code phone numbers and it wants to see that local number everywhere. So if you're using different numbers everywhere or using an 800 number, then you're losing out right off the bat on a lot of relevancy. And you need to make sure that you've got a blog on your website. And that blog should be located on your website. You don't want it at a separate URL, and please, for God's sake, don't use Blogger. And you need to make your blog a local destination. So things you can do, you want to blog about your community. Don't just talk about yourself. Show that you're involved with your community. Remember, people are checking you out to decide if they want to do business with you, and they're trying to get that sense of trust and sense that this is the kind of business that they want to do business with. And if you're just saying, buy my crap, buy my crap, buy my crap, buy my crap, that's totally different than saying, oh, look, there was this charity event and we were a part of it and we were a major sponsor and look what we did. And you're not saying that to brag, you're saying that because you're showing that you're involved in the community. Sponsor local events. A lot of businesses do that. This is something that every business should do. You should be involved in your community. And you guys have Studio Movie Girl down here yet? You got Alamo. So Studio Movie Girl is kind of like Alamo Draft House, but they're in Dallas. And I was doing some consulting with them and they have this whole outreach department because they're a purpose-driven company and they do all of this outreach all over the country, but they had nothing on their website about it. And I said, look, you guys are doing this because you believe in this. You believe that this is important for your company to do. You're not doing it to get on TV. But you don't have anything on your website about it. You're not taking advantage of it. You can create local event guides. So Dallas has a big marathon every year, and for one car dealer several years ago, we wrote an event guide for the race. So we said, here's a bunch of top 5 lists, top 5 hotels to stay at if you're coming in for the marathon, top 5 restaurants to eat at, top 5 places to stand on the race route to see your loved one run by. We put this PDF on this car dealer's website, and then we blasted it out on social media. They got a ton of links out of it, but that wasn't why we did it. But they got tons and tons of visibility, tons of retweets, tons of shares on Facebook. The guy actually sold a BMW to somebody that came in from out of town to go to the race because they stumbled across his site through the event guide. Create a local resource directory. Now, I'm not talking about making a links page where you're just trading links. That's old, that's stupid, it doesn't work. I'm talking about saying, hey, look, here's a list of local businesses. Support local businesses. Austin's really good on this. Here's a list of local businesses that we think you guys should do business with because these guys are legit. Interview local figures. If you know somebody on city council or somebody that works at the Capitol or whatever it would be, interview these people, put the interview up on the blog. Show your community involvement, show that you're involved. And for God's sake, share your posts on social. I can't tell you how many businesses I talk to that have great blog content, but they never push it out on social. You've got to do your content marketing strategies too. If you create the great content and you don't tell anybody about it, nobody's ever going to see it. And you've got to do some stuff to build links. Don't just build links to your site, build links to your blog. You don't have to build as many, and it really makes the stuff powerful. So, speaking of links, that's the next part of the local search ranking factors. So 18.3%. After Penguin, it's no longer a numbers game. So 5-6 years ago, it was whoever had the most was going to win. It didn't matter where they came from. It just mattered how many links can you get. Now, the source and the quality of the site that's linking to you and the relevancy of that site to your business really matter. So all the link builders are going to tell you only go after high quality sites. I'm going to tell you that's not true. You don't want to ignore the low authority local sites, because a lot of times when you're talking about a local business, you can have a link from a really crappy church website that a traditional link builder wouldn't go after, but that link is going to do more to prove local relevancy for your business and boost you up in local results. So you've got to go after those links. So what you want to do is use Open Site Explorer. It's a tool for Moz, or you can use Majestic or Ahrefs. If you guys know what these other tools are or use these other tools, it doesn't matter. Just be consistent in the link tool that you're using. If you want to use Moz's tool, it's moz.com/researchtools/OSE. So you can go in and drop in your URL and check the links that are coming into your site. And then, because you're just putting in a URL, you can check the links that go to your competitors' sites. So now you've got a list of your links and a list of your competitors' links. And then you can compare the two and figure out the links that they have that you don't have. And that saves you a ton of research, because that means it's probably pretty easy to get those links and they're relevant to that business because they're a competitor. So you can go after them, and that helps you compete. And it gives you ideas. You can check competitors in other cities that you're not necessarily competing against, but you can see the kind of links that these guys are going after, and it really helps you figure out what you need to go at. But remember, Google's really moving in a direction that it wants editorial links. So Google doesn't want you to get a link on a site where you can just call the site up and say, hey, give me a link. Google wants that site to link to you because you're worth linking to. Google wants people to link to you because you've got good content and a good user experience. So if you can control the placement or the text that's on that link, very soon those links are not going to count anymore. Moving on to citations, 15% of the local search ranking factors. Citations are mentions of your NAP on other websites. So this is typically directory sites. That's what's called a structured citation. That's when you've got your name, address, phone number listed out on another site. But you also have unstructured citations. So if someone happens to write a blog post about your business and they mention your business name and your phone number and your city, that's an unstructured citation. A lot of local SEOs will tell you citations don't matter anymore, but they're wrong. They're still powerful. In fact, if you're almost on page 1 or you're at the bottom of that map pack and you're just trying to get bumped up a little bit more, citations done correctly can really help push you over the hump.
What happened?
Like 3 people have seen that movie? Come on. Okay, seriously. Everybody that's taking notes, write down Young Frankenstein. It is the single greatest comedy movie that has ever been made in the history of the world. You guys are missing out. I'm blown away. I'm way too much of a movie nerd. Okay, citations all play together like this. You've got the major citation sources. So you've got Infogroup, Localese, Axiom, and Factual that are the major data sources that feed down to all the second level stuff. Then you've got all the second tier sources that all feed around, and you can notice everything points back. Now, they haven't updated their graphic yet. Really, it's Google My Business now, but Google changes the name every 6 weeks, so it still says Google plus local on their graphic. But everything's pointing back to your listing on Google and comparing. So when you're talking about citations, you're talking about all the times that your business name, address, and phone number are mentioned on other websites, and Google's going to compare that everywhere else that it sees and compare it to what shows up on your Google listing. So really, we could almost go back and adjust this pie chart because we're talking about all the offsite signals playing in with your Google My Business listing. So we go from looking like this when we compare those two together to looking like this. So citations technically are 30% of the pie. They're super powerful. In the words of David Nim, the guy that organizes and puts on this study every year, you need to be where Google expects you to be. Remember, Google's just a really complicated mathematical formula that's going to factor in a bunch of different things both on your site and off your site. So if Google's looking at a small business and it expects that that small business is going to be listed on these 50 sites because that's the 50 sites that all the businesses in that type of business are listed on, and you're only on 20 of those sites, then you're starting off with a negative right off the bat. So your citations need to be everywhere they should be, and they've got to be consistent. Name, address, phone number need to be character for character consistent, because if you've got bad info or mismatched info, that sends a bad signal to Google. Here's a great example of that. This is a dealership that we worked with in Metairie, Louisiana, right outside of New Orleans. So this would be like, for those of you that aren't familiar with geography down there, this would be like a Round Rock to Austin situation. This guy wasn't showing up at all in his city. So his actual name is this one with the apostrophe capital N. Don't ask me why, the guy's Cajun. The orange ones are the number of ways the guy misspelled his own business name on the homepage of his website. So the guy's business name is so confusing he can't even spell it right himself. Okay? So obviously his citations, all the places he was listed, they were all over the board. Plus, a lot of citations actually were this bottom one where it's I and apostrophe, which would be the grammatically correct version of dropping off the G and trying to be hip. So we said, okay, look, first month, let's not touch any content, let's not touch any links, let's not do anything. All we did was clean up his website and clean up his citations to make his business name match everywhere. That's all we did. 30 days later, the guy went from not ranking to being the number 2 result in organic and the number 1 result in MapPack. Now he's dropped completely off because the guy was struggling and almost going out of business, so he quit doing SEO with us, so now he sucks. But at the time, he was really kicking ass, and it was just from citations. So what you want to do is you want to use Moz Local. Moz Local is a great tool. Now, it's also a submission tool. Don't use the submission part of it because the submission part is crap, and you can tweet that and tell them that because I told them that. Really, you shouldn't tweet that because I'm trying to speak at their conference, so don't tell them I bashed them. But if you go to moz.com/local/search, you can put in your business name and your zip code, and you get a little graph like this. Is there anybody in here from R&D Motors that's here in Austin? I wanted to throw one car dealer thing. Okay, good, because this guy really sucks. You can see he's got a 29% score. He's only listed on 4 of the top 15 citation sources. So you go in and you put this in, you put your business name and your zip code, and it will show you what your score is. It will also show you, if you've got multiple phone numbers, it's going to show that you've got a bunch of inconsistent information. Now, because you're only checking business name and zip code, you can check your competitors. So if you're ranking in the map pack and you're like number 7 and your competitors are all up above you, run theirs and run yours and see what they've got that you don't have. Now, it could be a link thing, it could be a content thing, but a lot of times citations play into that too, and maybe you're just missing some citations that you should have. So once you've done Moz, that's the top 15 sources. You want to go to Whitespark and get more advanced. So with this one's big long URL, download the deck later, but this is a Canadian tool, it's super awesome. So instead of just checking 15, this one checks everything. So you go in and you put in your phone number, and it's going to spit out everywhere that that phone number exists online so you can see all your citations. Then you can also put in keywords for what business type you have, and it's going to give you ideas of places to go get citations based on the vertical that you're in. And then again, because you're only checking phone number, you can check all of your competitor citations. And then inside of this tool, once you run yourself and your competitors, you can run a graph and it will chart out everything that they've got that you don't have. So instead of having to manually do it in Excel, it does it for you. So moving on, Google My Business, formerly Google Places, 14.7%. The most important thing a business can do is claim their listing on Google Places, Google My Business. So if you're an agency and you're working with a business, or if you're a small business, the number 1 most important thing you should ever do for local SEO is make sure that this is claimed. In the past, you could have a phone call or a postcard. Now, I haven't talked to anybody in the last year that's been able to do a phone call. It's almost always a postcard. And that sucks for certain business types because it doesn't ever make it to you. It gets lost in the mail. So if you're having problems claiming, Google actually has phone support. It's in California. It's US based. They will skip the script if you know what you're talking about. They're super awesome and helpful. So if you go to bit.ly/phone support, it takes you to this forum. And you have to do this between, it goes till 1 a.m. Pacific time, so it's like 9 a.m. to 1 a.m. Pacific time. So like there's a little bit of time in the middle of the night shut down, but otherwise you go in and you click contact us, then you click call us, skip all the other crap, just click call us. And then you fill out all your information and click call me, and like immediately Google calls you and you got somebody on the phone that'll help you. It's super, super awesome. This is really helpful if you guys are dealing with a business or if it's your own business and somebody has claimed the page in the past and you don't know who claimed it and you don't have access. Call these guys, they'll help you get access. It's super awesome and it's way easier than trying to go through all the hoops that you have to go through otherwise. And so the new dashboard, once they've upgraded from Places to My Business, actually shows you tips on how to optimize. Google's helping you optimize your Places listing now. So if you log in and go to edit your information and you see these blue pop-ups, please, for God's sake, do what they're telling you to do. Google's actually trying to help you rank better, so go do all the things that the pop-up tips tell you to do. But besides those pop-up tips, there's a couple of important points that you need to hit. These are the optimization tips you guys need to write down. These are important. In Google Places, you had a limit of 200 characters on your description. In Google My Business, the new system, there is no limit. And most business owners either don't realize that they've had the switch or they realize they have the switch and they haven't messed with it. You can write a really long, kick-ass, descriptive, cool description for your business now. You can do formatting on the text. You can put links inside of that text. So go in and write a really long, kick-ass description. Now, if I'd been giving this talk before December, I would say, hey, great, now you've got 10 categories, pick as many categories as apply to your business. But now, because of the update in December, you need to only pick the most exact category. So if you're a bankruptcy attorney, you don't want to choose attorney and bankruptcy attorney. You want to just put bankruptcy attorney. That's according to Google. I wouldn't really have suggested that in the past, but apparently I've already seen some people that are getting hurt by putting too much crap in there. So pick the right categories. Make sure you're uploading photos and videos. A lot of people come in, they'll put a great description, but they don't put any photos in. And this is actually a factor. Google wants to see that you're trying to create a good user experience, so you've got to get the photos and videos in there. And please, put in a user image and a cover image. Because I've worked with tons of businesses all over the place in tons of different verticals, and they'll do everything they need to do, and they're replying to their reviews, and they're posting on Google Plus socially and doing all these things, but it's still the random color swoosh for their cover image. And it's still the little blue thing with a plus sign on it for their user image. It's all about user experience now. So make sure that when people get here that it's branded and it looks good for your company. Speaking of reviews, that's almost 10%. Oh, we're down to 5 minutes left. Let's see if we can squeeze through this. 88% of people will trust an online review as much as someone that their friend or family told them. They're trusting random strangers as much as friends. And 4 out of 5 people will decide not to buy from you if you have a crappy review. And now, with the switchover, reviews are appearing in a pop-up that's isolated from everything else. So in the past, if you were on the map pack and you saw somebody's reviews, you would click their review and it would take you to their Google Places page and you could see all the information and read the reviews. But now, if you go and you see the reviews and you click it, more Uchi, sorry, it gives you a pop-up right there on the search results page. So you see the name of the business and you see the address is kind of grayed out, but you don't get their website, you don't get their phone number, you have no way of clicking over and contacting them, and you see all their reviews. Isolated. So the first thing you're going to see is the reviews. So if you've got shitty reviews, you're in trouble because the first thing people see is your shitty reviews and then they're never going to do anything else. You can't fake a good reputation and you can't buy a good reputation. And nobody in here has seen that movie or you would have laughed because this is the movie You Can't Buy Me Love. That's Dr. McDreamy right there looking super nerdy for all the Grey's Anatomy fans. You can't fake caring about your customers. If you're a shady motherfucker, you're going to get bad reviews. The first thing you got to do is clean your shit up and be legit and care about your customers and care about your customer experience. And then you've got to look to yourself to get good reviews. Thank you. A couple Steve Martin fans in the room. You got to remove the roadblocks so that it's easy for people to leave you reviews, and then you have to ask them to leave you reviews. But you can't ask for people to leave you reviews on Yelp because it's against Yelp's terms of service to do that. But unfortunately, you can't ignore Yelp because if anybody does a search on their iPhone or their iPad on Apple Maps, the stars that show up for you are powered by Yelp. So again, Uchi, those are Yelp stars, not Google stars. So super important that you're getting reviews on Yelp too, because you might have 1,000 great reviews on Google and 2 good reviews on Yelp, and that doesn't look good if somebody's trying to find directions on how to get to your establishment. So here's a killer strategy to help you get more reviews. You want to create Domain.com/review. So a page on your website. You don't want people to have to go to Google and figure out how to do it because people are stupid. Domain.com/reviews. Explanation on that page. It says, hey, we'd love it if you'd leave us a review. Click here to do it on Google. And then underneath that, hey, by the way, you have to have a Google account. So if you don't have one, here's the steps on how to set one up. That review links directly to your Google My Business listing. Then in the sales process, you hand out, we use 4x6 postcards. You hand in the 4x6 postcard at the absolute last possible minute so that it's the last thing you're saying. You're saying, hey, thanks for your business. Leave us a review. That postcard tells them to go to domain.com/reviews. So then they'll go to that page and leave you the review. Then you can follow up with an email or 2 or 3, but you gotta check and make sure you're not emailing someone asking for a review that already left you a review because then you look like a dumbass. So here's a pro tip from Les. You do not want to copy a really kick-ass review off of your Google My Business page and paste it onto your site because Google wants the reviews on Google to be unique. So if you copy a review word for word off of what you got on your Google My Business listing and put it on your site, when Google crawls your site and sees that you copied it over, it's going to pull it off your page and you just lost that review where it's most important to have it. So on Google, you need five reviews to see the aggregate star rating, and then you need to shoot for 10 before you start going after Yelp or anywhere else or Urban Spoon or anything that you might need for your specific vertical. But really, you need to make sure that you've got more reviews than any of your competitors have. And did I just give the wrong tip from Les? I did. I got ahead of myself. Les's tip is leave reviews as business. So you can go in to your business's Google My Business page and then browse Google My Business as your business and leave reviews for other businesses as your business instead of as you. So also, flip side of that, if you have friends that own businesses, you can have their business leave reviews for your business as their business. So this is a great trick for people like car dealers or bankruptcy attorneys that it's really tough to get personal reviews from customers because they don't want to put their name out there that they did business with you. But you've got friends that own other businesses and they can come leave reviews as their business for your business. So then the other pro tip that I already talked about, don't copy reviews to your site because Google gets rid of them. Really quickly at the end here, social media, almost 6% of the factors. Please do social the right way. Everybody sucks at social. Even SEO people suck at social. The number one sin, this is my goal this year, my goal for 2015 is to make sure that this crap doesn't happen anymore. Do not tether Facebook to Twitter.
Thank God.
Okay?
Don't do it.
Facebook and Twitter can get tethered together so that you can just type something in Facebook and then it automatically shows up on Twitter so you can be a lazy mofo. Okay, you've got Hootsuite, you've got Sendable, you've got TweetDeck, you've got a ton of things out there that let you attach to multiple accounts and go in one place and post and have it go everywhere. If you do the Facebook to Twitter thing, you do stupid shit like this, and this is the bad example for Uchi. Everything that they post on Facebook goes to Twitter. So all of these are photos on Facebook. On Twitter, all you see is a link, fb.me/hash something. This is a shitty experience on Twitter. If somebody's on Twitter, they're on Twitter because they prefer Twitter. The only reason I use Facebook is when I have to do something for a client. I use Twitter. If I'm on Twitter and I see people doing this, do you think I'm gonna, I don't even know if this is a website or if it's their website or a different website or a video or a picture. I have no idea of knowing what it is, but I do know that it's a Facebook link. Do you think I'm gonna click on that? Hell no. Your customers are not gonna do that either. If you were sharing photos natively inside of Twitter, each one of these would be a nice big gorgeous photo that shows up in the stream.
Plus it cuts off, like we will resume normal business ... What the hell?
Yeah, because you got something that's longer than 140 characters in Facebook. So it's a really shitty experience. So if you guys are doing it or you got clients that are doing it, turn this shit off. Also, don't just talk about yourself. Everybody loves to talk about themselves on social. That's not what customers want to hear. And don't just share links to the crap that you're selling. I tell this to car dealers all the time. You get people to follow you. I come in and buy an F-150 and you're like, hey, follow me. We like to keep in touch and give you service specials. All right, cool, I follow you. And then all you do for the next week is share links to F-150s. I'm gonna be like, click, unfollow you, motherfucker. How about we actually use social media to be social? That's why it's called social media. It's called social media, not buy shit from me media. Okay, so start using social to be social. And when you guys are posting, you need to follow the 80-20 rule. That means 4 out of 5 posts need to be engagement-oriented posts. Not talking about your stuff, but engaging with your customers. Sharing stuff that they will be likely to share or reshare or retweet or comment on, or commenting on things that your customers are talking about, or taking part in conversations. And then the other 1 out of 5 posts is your sales and marketing stuff. And related to social media, how many people in here are on a WordPress website? Lots, right? Make sure you're using the plugin called Open Graph Metabox. This lets you control what your share is going to look like on Facebook. If you don't use this and you're just using Yoast or some other plugin, Facebook's just gonna randomly pick an image off of your page. With this, you can control what image shows up when you're sharing on Facebook. Also, if someone else shares your page on Facebook, you are now able to control what that share is going to look like. So this is hugely important. So, hopefully that was not too painful. Now with these tips, you guys can look at Google and not have a glassy stare. Peace. I'm out. If you download the deck, there's my contact information. Please follow me on Twitter if you are a Twitter user. This is the first of so far 18 speaking engagements I have this year. All the conferences I go to, I live tweet, so you get lots of good info from my Twitter stream. And if you feel like you want to download the deck later because I talked too fast and you couldn't take notes, at the end I have a chronological list of all the movies by order of release date. Thank you.
Go back to your website.
Slide with the
Contact info?
Yeah.
There you go. So, thanks y'all.
Thank you.
Questions? Anybody?
When you were talking about 1-800 numbers,
Yes.
so if you have a chain that has multiple locations, they have their local number, but it's common for the parent company to want to have a 1-800 number on there as well. Do you think that that's hurting the
It is hurting.
return?
It is
Even if
hurting.
you're not putting schema on it?
Leaving schema out of the equation, because like schema, it's now all these things I talked about, keep in mind, it's not like you can say, oh, I'm just going to switch to a local phone number, now I'm going to rank higher. It's like all small pieces of the puzzle that all have to fit together to form the big picture. Schema is not going to make you rank one way or the other. It's not really a part of the algorithm. It's just helping Google crawl your site better. And a lot of us, there's some anecdotal evidence that in some cases it does maybe help you rank better, but let's just assume that it's not included. So just looking at it, a lot of, and I deal with this with a lot of chain businesses really like to force the 1-800 number so that they can do call tracking. And that's really the reason they're forcing it. Because nowadays, whenever you're talking about a local business, everybody has cell phones. So even if somebody's kind of outside your area, they don't need to have a toll-free number to call you. They can call on their cell phone for free. So you don't need that 800 number. So if you're doing it purely because you need call tracking, that's what your call tracking provider gave you, or that's what the parent company is handing out, you could do call tracking on local phone numbers. So there's no reason not to do local phone number to do that call tracking. So that's what you've got to figure out how to talk to the right people at corporate and say, look, pushing out 800 numbers everywhere and having mismatched numbers is hurting how these guys are going to rank locally. And a lot of times if you point out, hey, look, here's our main competitor, you know, if you're a coffee shop and you're looking at Starbucks and Starbucks doesn't have 800 numbers and Starbucks is kicking our ass, well, obviously Starbucks is Starbucks, but, you know, not using a big, massive thing, but, you know, comparable sizes. If somebody's doing something that you're not and you can point out different articles on search engine land, or, you know, you've been to conferences and heard people like me talk about it, and you say, look, all these people are saying the same things, you need to have a local phone number, and look, we're not doing it, but look, our competitors around us are all doing it. That's usually one way to kind of push to have them realize, oh, okay, well, maybe this is something we should do.
Do you think that including the area code in the content kind of lends some local cred?
Yeah, having that local area code is what's important. So yeah, you should always have local area code, even if some cities you still don't have to have that area code when you're calling like out in the boonies, but you should always have it anyway.
Like, what about like dealerships in 512? Do you think that would do?
No, that doesn't do anything. No, that's old school, doesn't work. Yeah, way back.
Why do you think that the Moz listing service is no good? Tell me about that.
The Moz listing service is no good because it pretty much sucks. It only sends to like, Brian, have you used it lately? Last time I used it, it was 6 sites. I know they're working on adding other sites to it. It can be beneficial for a brand new business. The only time I would ever suggest using it is if it's a brand new business that's never existed before, so there's no information out there. But if you're using it for a business that's already existed and been online, chances are that information is already going to be on those sites. And we had some stuff that we ran through as a test when they first released their tool a year ago, and it took 8 months for that stuff to push out. Where if I'd have gone and done it manually, I could have done it manually and would have pushed out in 30 days. So it's just really slow. The benefit is, okay, cool, you can send it to a couple of the major people for like $40 cheaper than if you use something else, or you can do it yourself for free, you know? If you really need a submission service because you're dealing with a massive scale of a bunch of individual locations, Whitespark has a submission service. It's like $5 a listing. There's also Bright Local. There's also Local Site Submit. So there's places out there that have manual people that will go do these submissions for you. It's better solution.
What about like, so you saw Square Trade and these kind of things? Do these things get any kind of results?
For Square Trade?
Yeah, so you had showed it up there. Square Trade, Wix, Weebly's, WordPress, things like that.
But I don't even use Square Trade. I don't even know what that is.
I saw it on the screens.
Oh, must have been something in the background. Yeah, I can't answer that. I don't know what Square Trade is. What, if you filmed in what it is?
It's one of these DIY website things. Like
oh, God, never use it. Never, yeah, like.
No, it's Squarespace.
Squarespace. Okay,
Squarespace,
yeah, okay,
Squarespace.
yeah. Yeah.
Square Trade's the warranty.
There's a huge difference between the DIY like Wix and crappy site companies like that and using WordPress. So when I'm talking WordPress, I'm talking self-hosted WordPress, not you're going to WordPress.org and doing something. I'm talking you're grabbing the WordPress, you're installing it on your own server and you've got it running your website. Totally different situation than a DIY website. I would never use a DIY website for anybody.
Doesn't work for SEO.
You're going to be severely limited in what you can do in optimizing your site.
If we have to move a set of blocks from one domain to another domain, is there a best practice you might recommend?
Couldn't hear you, what?
If I have to move a set of blocks from one domain to another domain, is there things that I should be following?
So you've got a set of blogs, not just a blog.
Yeah.
So the set of blogs would be, you've got one business that has multiple blogs, or you've got multiple businesses that all have a blog each.
Now, I have one business that has a blog, and we need to move it to a new domain. They're changing the domain.
So why is the blog not on the website domain?
It's in the previous domain. Should we just move it over and move that?
So the website and the blog are on two separate URLs?
No, it's the same URL.
Oh, but you're just moving everything.
Yeah.
So ideally what you want to do is you want to set up 301 redirects for every page. So 301 redirect is basically telling Google, okay, anything that counted for this old URL needs to automatically reflect over to this new URL. Now, depending on the size of the blog and the size of the site, that could be a massive, massive list. But you can just do a root 301 that says, okay, anything for this domain goes over to this domain. So if the actual URLs don't change other than the root domain, you could put in one line of code that's just going to make everything work. But you definitely want to set that up, because otherwise, let's say you've got 1,000 posts on the blog, but 20 of those posts actually, were popular and got some links. And so you may have 200 or 300 links to those 20 posts. If you now change URLs and you don't have a 301 set up, those links are pointing to pages that don't exist anymore, and you're losing the value of those links. So you want to make sure you set up those 301s so that you still retain the value of those links and the work that you've done in the past.
Got a quick one. So if you have a e-commerce site, local e-commerce site, and that e-commerce site has on-site reviews, basically for services, products, you probably have maybe 100 different products. Those reviews are locally based. How can we make them more relevant? What would be your recommendation? To maybe kind of integrate Google in some way to keep those reviews? Because right now, what my experience is with this, it's totally irrelevant. I mean, you get it for the customers that are on site, but how can we make it more usable?
So you're talking e-commerce. Is this e-commerce for a physical storefront business, or it's strictly an e-commerce business?
Brick and mortar, and physical address, everything together. Yeah.
So to be perfectly honest, I don't ever do anything with e-commerce because I strictly do local businesses. Okay. Now, if you're talking e-commerce that's right, so if you're talking that's e-commerce that's associated with local business, you still want to have those reviews for those products on the site, because it's the Amazon experience. If people are trying to decide what they want to buy, they're going to want to read about that product. And so if you're in an e-commerce situation, it's okay to have reviews on your site. If you're strictly talking local business, you don't want reviews on your site because people know that they're not going to be legit.
You know something that would hurt you in that way? What would you...
No, it wouldn't hurt, because people are going to read. So your Google review strategy is to get reviews about your business. The reviews on the e-commerce side are reviews for individual products that doesn't really have anything to do with your business. So the reviews for the business is what you want to do on Google, and that's what people are going to use when they're trying to decide if they want to buy from you or not. But the product reviews on the e-commerce you kind of want to have those there, because if somebody's trying to figure out if they want to buy it, wouldn't you rather have them read honest customer reviews on your site than have to go jump over and try to read them somewhere else and end up buying from Amazon instead?
I was just thinking maybe there's some way, to increase...
No, because really with the e-commerce stuff, people are associating those reviews with the product and the product, with the product and not with your business. So, yeah.
I have a customer who used Yext last year, and now, of course, it's all screwed up. There's all kinds of
Yeah,
complications.
because it's Yext.
Yeah, because it's yes, and she wants us to fix it. Now, trying to wrest those away from Yext and actually claim some of those listings has been a real nightmare. Do you have any suggestions?
So what's really funny is I was this close to wearing my Yext hoodie today. So I typically, like, this is a slightly different presentation than what I would get at like an SEO conference where it's all like super nerdy guys that want super in-depth tips and they don't care about the general stuff and they really want to care just on-site and links and they don't. I try to spread it out and make it more applicable to a lot of different business types. So typically I go off on a rant about how much Yext sucks. And because I speak so much, Yext doesn't want me doing that anymore, so they're really trying to buy me off and they're offering me all sorts of free stuff. They sent me this giant box, like seriously, like big box of like every piece of swag that they have for Christmas to try to like buy them off. So I actually wear the hoodie because it's super comfy and everybody's like, ooh, that's your hate hoodie. But yeah, Yext, anybody in here that's curious about Yext, Yext is a service that lets you go in to a single interface and put in one bit of one series of whatever the form is of name, address, phone number, description, photos, logo, and that pushes out to 300 sites. So for small businesses, oh my gosh, that's super convenient because instead of having to pay somebody else to do it, or instead of spending my own time to go to 300 sites, I can use Yext and do it one time and it pushes out and it's immediate. Because on a lot of these sites, you have to wait for the database to refresh, so it could be 30 to 60 days before the info updates, but Yext is immediate. The thing that sucks about Yext is it's anywhere from $30 to $50 a month, and you have to pay it for forever. Because Yext is not changing that information. Yext, like if you got bad info, like the Deal and Doug's guy, we could have used Yext for him, it would have fixed everything immediately. The problem is all that bad info is still out there because Yext is it's like more powerful than the other data. Yext has agreements with all these data sources to say, hey, if we're sending you a feed, ignore what you have and take ours instead. But then as soon as you stop paying Yext, the Band-Aid gets ripped off and all the crap that was out there is still there, which is what you're dealing with now. So really the thing that you're gonna need to do is either have somebody on your staff go through and just manually go through the process, or you're gonna wanna go to either Whitespark, Bright Local, or Local Site Submit. I would suggest Whitespark. It's gonna cost you anywhere from $5 to $10 a listing depending on your vertical, and you're just gonna have to pay them to go out and do them all manually.
But they will actually claim it and give you the login and password.
Exactly, yeah, so they'll go out, it's exactly the same thing as if you had somebody on your staff going out and claiming it, you've got all the logins, they'll give you all the logins afterward. It's just, you're saying, hey look, if you're talking about 50 citations, you're like, I'd rather spend $500 and have you guys go do this for me than to spend 2 weeks of one of my minions' time. So that's what you'll need to do. Yeah.
I serve Austin and live in Georgetown. And so my address is going, and I'm mostly virtual because I'm a career coach by phone.
Right.
So I'll have my address, Georgetown, Texas. Can I say serving the Austin?
You can, but it won't matter.
It won't?
Yeah, before Pigeon, which happened in July, I could have had you ranking in Austin for, what your business coach, career coach.
Career coach.
So I could have had you ranking for Austin career coach very easily. Now, it's still possible, but it's a whole lot of work and it's highly unlikely that it'll happen. So it's very difficult to have a business that is not located in the actual, like we're talking metro area of Austin. If everybody wants to rank for Austin keyword phrase or keyword phrase Austin, it's going to be very difficult to outrank the people that are in Austin if you're not in Austin. And it's unfortunate, it sucks, but Google likes to screw people over. And that's kind of how it is. What you can do strategy-wise on your content, push out a lot of content about Austin.
Okay.
And not just talking about yourself, but like those blog, talk about Austin community things going on in Austin. Push out, try to build up a lot of relevancy about Austin, and then mention the fact that, your services are better than what people would typically get in Austin, and then really blast it on social and build some links to those internal pages that talk about Austin and try to get some relevancy built up and some authority built up for Austin. Maybe it gets page 2.
Okay.
You could hire a really expensive SEO and maybe in a year or 2 they could get you there, but I would think it's probably not possible. But then again, I've never worked in that niche, and if same situation, let's assume, do you know if there's a map pack for that search query if you do career coach Austin? So you've got 17 possible slots on page 1. If there's only 10 people in Austin that do it, then you could definitely be on page 1 because the 10 people are going to outrank you, but you'd be down at the bottom. Yeah. But I'm guessing there's probably more than 10 people, so If there's more than 17, you won't. That's the whole math equation thing. You should go read the math equation. That's kind of, saying, hey, let's think about if you're in a suburb, how many, there's probably 20 businesses in your suburb. So right off the bat, there's 10 people that aren't going to be on page 1. But if we're talking about, Georgetown, Round Rock, everything that's around Austin and everybody that wants to show up in Austin, you're competing against 300 businesses and there's only 10 spots on page 1. If you're not doing SEO, you're not going to show up. So.
Hey, Greg, there's no map pack.
There's no map pack. So then you'd have 10 spots. So if there's less than 10, then great, cool. You can probably be on page 1. If there's more than 10 in Austin, then it's probably not going to happen. But also, because there's no map pack, it's more of a strictly organic.
Yeah.
So with the map pack, that's where you're really limited by your location. Because it's strictly organic, if you really kick ass on SEO, then you could get there.
Okay.
Now it's going to take time. It's not like you can flip a switch and be there. But if you really build up relevancy in your content, get some really kick-ass links, then you could get there eventually.
Okay. Do you know anything about eGumball?
No, never heard of it.
Service?
Never heard of it.
Okay.
So the first thing you mentioned that was the most important is the Google My Business listing.
Right.
But if you had to do these in order, what would you do afterward?
It completely depends on, has that business existed in the past or is it brand new? Do they have a website or do they not? What's the status of their website? Do they have social media? Like there's so many factors there. Let's assume that the business already exists and that they already have a website that's got at least passable content on it. The first thing you do is check Google My Business, claim it, get it optimized. Second thing you do is make sure their content's really kick-ass. So almost go back to the local search ranking factor pie chart. The number one most important thing is claim your listing on Google, and then beyond that, follow what the most weight is on the pie chart and do those things first.
Okay.
Unless it's like, if they don't have any links at all, start working links.
Backlinks to that.
Yeah.
So, quick question. Does it matter, my wife and I share an office, an address, a physical address.
Right.
She's got her own business, I got a when we use that same address for different business, does Google does anything?
What are the two business types?
One is college counseling, and the other one is IT consulting.
So do you know if it pulls the map pack on those types of queries?
I don't know.
Because the map pack's really all you have to worry about as far as.
There's another right there, Greg.
Try the other one. Better. No, there we go. Yeah, so if you're trying to show up in the map pack, that's where you're really worried about name, address, phone number. If the map pack doesn't show on those queries and it's just regular organic stuff, then it doesn't really matter. Now it still kind of plays in a little bit. Ideally you want to have unique addresses, but if there's no map pack, then you're probably still okay.
But for claiming a business, is that going to be a problem?
No, because it just sends you the postcard.
Doesn't it care that it already is in the system as something else?
Ideally, you want to have unique addresses, but with home-based businesses, a lot of times there's nothing you can do. So, yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
You mentioned wages as a problem. Let's say we office had a capital factory. So that's a little bit different, but it's kind of not, because Regis has their mailboxes and they've got their for rent space.
Right. Now, the address here is going to be the same for every business that's located here.
That's right.
But it's also probably likely that most of the businesses that office out of here do not serve people at this location. So typically when you're talking about a business and an address and you're showing up in a map pack, it's either a business that's like a service area business like a plumber or an electrician, or it's a business where it's like a dry cleaner or a restaurant or someone comes to your physical location. So I would guess if it's like computer programming or anything like that, it's not something that's going to show up with a map pack, so then you don't really have to worry about the address situation. If it is a situation where there are map packs for certain queries, then it's going to be extremely bad that everybody has the same address. So what you could do is, you didn't hear this from me, but you could like fake a suite number. We do that a lot with car dealerships because they'll have like with car dealerships, Lincoln cannot, even though it's Ford and Lincoln are the same company, marketing wise, Lincoln has to be completely isolated. Lincoln can't appear with anything else. So on a Lincoln website, you can only show Lincoln cars. So you can't even show used cars or anything that aren't Lincoln. And even though Ford and Lincoln are on the same lot, it's always two separate buildings because they have to be separated. And even though it's the same dealership and same company, it has to be isolated. The phone number and the address are the same for both, but call it, 1900 Main Street. and then we'll just make Lincoln 1902 Main Street, even though there is no 1902 because they've got everything from 1900 to 1908 or whatever. You fake an address, and that way you at least have something unique. As long as the mail would still be delivered to that fake address, you're probably okay. Yeah.
Would the phone number not affect, I have another follow-up question, but would the phone number not affect that? Because they're, or I guess they're just separate numbers because forward.
Yeah, but you'd have separate numbers but the same address. But again, it all depends on if the map pack is showing for that query. Because if it's not map pack and it's just organic, you don't really have to worry about it. But if it is a map pack kind of thing, then you don't want to have multiple businesses at the same address, even if it's different phone numbers.
And my follow-up question was, you were talking about Google My Business and you mentioned something about, you mentioned landing pages and what page, do you do separate pages, like very local, tightly locally built pages?
So,
on the list, on the directory?
Let's talk Starbucks as an example. You have a Starbucks made website that has a location finder, Home Depot, Lowe's, anything like this. You would have a location page for each physical location. So instead of just a page that lists out everything, you might have, 6th Street Starbucks has a page on the site just for that location. And the Google My Business listing for the 6th Street Starbucks points to that internal page, not to the home page. So if you've got a business, Ace Cash Express or anything like that, you've got thousands of locations nationwide, you're gonna have thousands of location pages, and each of those Google My Business pages will link to that internal location page instead of all of them linking to the homepage. That way, you can have that unique address and unique phone number that matches up to what's in your Google My Business.
Put unique content on that page.
Right. So like also, you want to, it's about the relevant, this mic does not like me. It's all about the relevancy, like I said. So you don't want to just have that page and all it you're creating 1,000 pages that's just Starbucks with a different address and a different phone number. You've got to have stuff about that neighborhood and information about that city and maybe, directions, I'll just talk loud. You guys all hear me?
Yeah.
It's annoying. Directions or landmarks. Hey, if you're coming this way and you're coming down, you can put that sort of thing. If you're, depending on the scale, a lot of businesses that I work with, it's, 20 or less locations. So you're pushing out blog content like I was talking about the different locations. So, you've got a Round Rock location and a Georgetown location and all of this. And then on those location pages, you can have over in the sidebar a filtered view of the blog posts that just deal with that. So now you've got internal linking to other stuff related to that city, and it helps build that relevancy. One more question. Who's the lucky person? Anybody? Yeah. Yeah.
On that Moz local search where it's giving you percentage.
Yep.
Do you have a target percentage? Do you go?
No, because it's off and on, and it's not 100% legit because you might check it one day and it'll say 85, and check it the next day it says 65 because it couldn't reach one of the sites because their crawler flipped out on you. Typically, we shoot for like 80 to 85% or above, but it's never going to get to 100% just because their tool's kind of wonky.
Right.
And like they didn't update some of the things. Like Bright Local is another kind of competitor where you can Bright Local. So we use Whitespark to do all of our citation work, but we use Bright Local, which is a competitor service, to just organize our work because Bright Local has a better UI, and you can put in a lot of notes and things like that Whitespark doesn't allow you to do. So Bright Local does the same sort of thing where you're comparing all of these different areas, but none of them have updated anything over the last 6 months. So like Bright Local's widget will tell you that your Google listing is not 100% optimized because you don't have 10 categories filled out, where now you don't want 10 categories filled out. So a lot of these scores are kind of like, meh, but you shoot for that 80% range, you're probably good. Really what you want to do is, you pull it up and it's going to show you the graph. You're really using Moz Local to check for the incomplete and inconsistent more than anything else.
Right.
So,
thanks.
What about all the other search engines?
What other
Google.
search engines? Nobody uses any other search engines. Anything you do for Google is going to work for those guys too, but you shouldn't even worry about it because Google's 80 to 90% of all searches, so who cares? So, thanks y'all.